Hello and welcome. As the crisp autumn air settles in and the leaves begin their magnificent transformation, many of us feel an instinctual pull to tidy up our gardens. We grab our shears, our loppers, and our gloves, ready to prepare our beloved plants for the coming winter. It's a satisfying task, bringing a sense of order and completion to the gardening season. However, what if I told you that sometimes the best thing you can do for your garden is to simply step back and do nothing at all? It's a lesson in patience and understanding the natural rhythms of our plants. This time of year is crucial. While it's tempting to give everything a final, neat trim, pruning certain plants in the fall can do far more harm than good. It can stimulate new, tender growth that will be immediately killed by the first frost, leaving the plant vulnerable. It can remove the very buds that are set to bring us glorious flowers next spring. And in some cases, it can even expose plants to devastating diseases that are more active in the cooler, damp weather of autumn. Resisting that urge to prune is not neglect. It's a strategic, knowledgeable decision that ensures the health and vitality of your garden for years to come. So today we're going to explore this idea of less is more. I'll guide you through 12 specific plants that you should absolutely not prune this fall. We'll discuss why leaving them be is not just a good idea, but the right thing to do for their long-term well-being. By understanding the unique needs of each plant, you'll become a more intuitive and successful gardener. It's about working with nature, not against it, to create a garden that is not only beautiful but also resilient. It's a good thing. Let's begin with one of the garden's most cherished inhabitants, the rose. It's so tempting to want to neaten up our rose bushes as the season winds down, cutting back those long, leggy canes. But you must resist. Pruning roses in the fall is a significant mistake. When you make a cut, you are signaling to the plant that it's time to produce new growth. In spring, this is exactly what we want. In autumn, however, this new growth is incredibly tender and delicate. It has no time to harden off before the first hard frost arrives, and it will be immediately zapped and killed, creating a wound on the cane. This frost damage can travel down the cane, causing what we call dieback, which can weaken or even kill the entire plant over the winter. The open wounds from pruning also provide a perfect entry point for fungal diseases and pests seeking a place to overwinter. The best course of action is to simply let your roses go dormant naturally. You can clean up any fallen leaves to prevent disease, but save the major pruning for late winter or early spring, just as the new leaf buds begin to swell. That is the proper time to shape your roses for a spectacular season of blooms. Azaleas. Their breathtaking display of color in the spring is a reward for any gardener's patience. To ensure you get that reward, you must understand their blooming cycle. Azaleas, like their rhododendron cousins, are plants that bloom on old wood. This means they form their flower buds for the following year during the late summer and early fall, shortly after they finish their current season's bloom. If you take your shears to an azalea bush in the autumn, you are, quite literally, cutting off next spring's flowers. Every snip removes a potential cluster of vibrant blossoms. Beyond sacrificing your spring floral show, fall pruning can also cause foliage burn. The dense canopy of an azalea protects the inner leaves and stems from the harsh winter sun and wind. When you open up the plant by pruning it back, you expose that normally sheltered foliage to the elements, which can lead to unsightly browning and desiccation. The proper time to prune an azalea, if it needs shaping at all, is within a few weeks after it has finished blooming in the spring. This gives it the entire growing season to recover and set those precious buds for the following year. Sunflowers are the very embodiment of summer's joy, standing tall and bright in the garden. As autumn arrives and their magnificent heads begin to droop and fade, our instinct for tidiness might tell us to cut them down immediately. I urge you to leave them standing. Those giant seed heads are a natural bird feeder, a banquet for the feathered friends who stay with us through the cold months. You will be delighted by the sight of finches, chickadees, and nuthatches clinging to the stalks, diligently picking out the nutritious seeds. It's a wonderful way to support your local ecosystem. Beyond providing a feast for wildlife, the skeletal remains of sunflowers add a unique structural element and visual interest to the winter garden. Their tall, dark silhouettes look quite dramatic against a blanket of fresh snow or coated in glistening frost. They serve as a reminder of the summer's bounty and the cyclical nature of the garden. Leaving them also allows some seeds to fall to the ground, potentially self-sowing for a delightful surprise of new sunflowers next year. It's a perfect example of how a messy garden can be a living, thriving one, even in the depths of winter. On red-hot pokers or Gnyphophea are such dramatic and exotic-looking perennials, with their fiery torches of flowers. When their blooms fade and the foliage begins to look a bit floppy and brown in the fall, you might be tempted to cut it all back to the ground for a cleaner look. But honestly, this is a critical mistake for the health of the plant. The clump of foliage, even when it's no longer green and vibrant, serves a vital purpose throughout the winter. It acts as a natural, protective mulch for the plant's crown, which is the most vulnerable part. This mound of old leaves shields the crown from the damaging freeze-thaw cycles of winter, keeping it insulated and dry. Cutting it back exposes the crown directly to excess moisture from rain and melting snow, which can lead to crown rot, a fatal condition for these plants. By leaving the foliage intact, you are providing the plant with its own built-in winter coat. Wait until you see the first signs of new green growth emerging from the center in the spring. That is your signal that it's safe to finally cut away the old, tattered foliage from the previous year. Is there any fragrance more evocative of late spring than that of a lilac in full bloom? It's simply heavenly. To ensure your lilac bush is covered in those fragrant panicles year after year, you must be very particular about when you prune. Like azaleas, lilacs set their flower buds for the following season on old wood during the summer. These buds are fully formed and waiting on the branches throughout the fall and winter, ready to burst forth when the weather warms. If you prune your lilac bush in the fall, you are removing every single one of those potential flowers. It's a common and honestly heartbreaking mistake. A gardener will meticulously prune their lilac in October, only to wonder why it produced no flowers the following May. The plant itself may be perfectly healthy, but its entire floral display for the year has been inadvertently discarded in the compost pile. The only time to prune a lilac is immediately after it finishes blooming in the spring. This gives the plant the maximum amount of time to produce the new growth that will mature over the summer and form the flower buds for the next year. It's a simple rule that guarantees a fragrant and beautiful spring. Now we move from shrubs to a true giant of the landscape, the mighty oak tree. Pruning large trees is a significant undertaking, and timing is absolutely critical, especially with oaks. You should never, under any circumstances, prune an oak tree in the fall. The primary reason for this is the severe risk of a devastating fungal disease called oak wilt. This disease is spread by tiny sap beetles that are attracted to the fresh wounds on pruned trees. These beetles are most active during the warmer months, including early to mid-fall in many regions. When you prune an oak during this period, the scent of the fresh sap on the cut acts like a beacon, drawing these beetles to the tree. If they are carrying the fungal spores, they will infect your tree, and oak wilt is often fatal and can spread to other nearby oaks. The safest time to prune oak trees is in the dead of winter, when temperatures are consistently below freezing. The beetles are dormant, and the tree is fully dormant, minimizing sap flow. If you spot a dead or damaged limb in the fall, the best practice is to mark it with a ribbon or paint and wait for the appropriate time in late winter to have it safely removed. Rhododendrons are the queens of the shade garden, with their large, leathery evergreen leaves and spectacular trusses of flowers. Much like their smaller-leaved azalea relatives, rhododendrons bloom on old wood. They spend the summer and early fall carefully developing the flower buds that will produce their magnificent spring display. These buds are often quite large and prominent at the tips of the branches by the time autumn arrives. Any pruning done at this time is a direct sacrifice of next year's beauty. You would be cutting away the very thing you've been waiting for. Even if a rhododendron has become overgrown and leggy, fall is not the time to correct it. A hard pruning in autumn can stimulate a flush of new, tender leaf growth that will be blackened and damaged by the first frost, weakening the plant. The best approach is patience. Enjoy the evergreen structure of the plant through the winter, appreciate its spring bloom, and then, immediately after the last flower fades, you can undertake any necessary pruning. This allows the plant the full growing season to recover, fill out, and set a new crop of buds for the following year. It's the proper, respectful way to care for these garden aristocrats. Caryopteris, often called bluebeard or blue mist spirea, is a wonderful late-season bloomer, providing a haze of beautiful blue flowers when much of the garden is beginning to fade. It is a subshrub, meaning it has a woody base, but its top growth is often more herbaceous. Because it blooms on new wood, the growth it produces in the current season, you might think it's safe to cut it back in the fall. However, this is not the case. That framework of old, woody stems, even after the leaves have dropped, provides crucial winter protection for the plant. Pruning Caryopteris back to the ground in the fall exposes its crown and the base of the stems to the harshness of winter. This greatly increases the risk of winter dieback, where the cold penetrates deeper into the plant's structure, potentially killing it to the ground or even entirely. The old stems act as a buffer against the cold and help trap insulating snow around the base. The correct method is to wait until spring. When you see new buds beginning to break along the lower parts of the stems, you can then prune it back hard, which will encourage the vigorous new growth that will produce that lovely late summer blue display. The Oakleaf hydrangea is a truly magnificent four-season shrub. It has beautiful, large panicles of white flowers in summer, stunning fall foliage in shades of burgundy and red, and interesting, peeling bark for winter interest. A key characteristic that dictates its care is that it blooms on old wood. The flower buds for next summer's show are formed on the stems that grew this year. These buds are set and waiting all through the fall and winter. If you prune an Oakleaf hydrangea in the autumn, you are removing all of next year's flowers. It's as simple as that. There is almost no good reason to prune this shrub in the fall. Unlike some other hydrangeas, its faded flower heads are quite sturdy and attractive, catching the frost and snow beautifully and adding to the winter garden's texture. Leaving the plant entirely intact is the best strategy. If you find that your shrub is getting too large or has some dead wood, the time to address that is in the summer, right after it has finished blooming. This allows you to shape the plant without sacrificing the next year's floral performance. Let this handsome shrub be a star of your winter landscape. Russian sage, or Perovskia, with its airy silver-green foliage and spires of lavender-blue flowers, is really a staple of the hot, sunny border. As fall progresses, the foliage drops, leaving behind a ghostly framework of silvery white stems. Now, your tidy-up impulse might be screaming to cut this back to the ground, but I tell you, don't listen. Those seemingly dead stems are actually the plant's winter armor. Russian sage has a woody base that can be pretty susceptible to rotting in cold, wet winter soil, and the stems play a vital role in protecting the plant's crown. This whole framework of stems helps to wick moisture away from the crown and prevents it from sitting in a soggy, frozen mess. They also catch leaves and snow, creating a layer of natural insulation over the plant's most vulnerable point. Cutting it back in the fall exposes the crown to the full brunt of winter's wet and cold, and that often leads to severe dieback or even the complete loss of the plant. The proper time to prune is in the spring. Just wait until you see the first tiny new buds emerging from the base of the plant, and then you can cut the old silvery stems back to just above the lowest set of new buds. Peonies are really the epitome of garden glamour, with their lush, romantic blooms. Their pruning is a matter of very specific timing. While they are on this list of plants not to prune in the fall, there is a slight nuance. You should not prune them early in the fall while the foliage is still green or just beginning to yellow. During this time, the leaves are still actively photosynthesizing, gathering energy and storing it in the tuberous roots for next year's growth and flower production. Cutting them back prematurely starves the plant of this essential energy. The correct time to cut back herbaceous peonies is very late in the fall, after the foliage has been completely killed by a hard frost and has turned brown and collapsed. At this point, the plant is fully dormant, and all the energy has been stored. Cutting back the dead foliage at this stage is a matter of garden sanitation. It removes material where fungal spores like botrytis blight can overwinter and cause problems next spring. So for peonies, the rule is to wait. Let nature do its work, let the frost come, and only then, when the foliage is truly dead, should you clean it up. Coneflowers, or Echinacea, are beloved for their daisy-like flowers and their resilience in the garden. They are also champions of the four-season garden. When their vibrant petals drop in the fall, they leave behind a spiky, dark seed head. While you certainly can cut them back in the fall without harming the plant itself, as they are very tough perennials, I strongly advise against it. There are just so many good reasons to leave them standing through the winter. First and foremost, like sunflowers, their seed heads are a vital food source for birds. You will see goldfinches and other small birds balancing on the stems, picking out the seeds all winter long. It's honestly a joy to watch. The seed heads also provide shelter for beneficial insects to overwinter. And from a design perspective, the dark, graphic shapes of the coneflower heads look absolutely stunning when dusted with snow or encased in ice, adding texture and structure to the winter landscape. Since they are so hardy, there is no pressing horticultural need to clean them up. You can simply leave them be until early spring, just before new growth begins to emerge at the base. It's a choice that benefits wildlife and the beauty of your garden. So there you have it, 12 plants that will thank you for your restraint this autumn. As we've seen, holding back your pruning shears is not a sign of a lazy gardener, but of a wise one. It's about understanding that the garden cycle doesn't end with the first frost. It's a period of rest, of storing energy, and of quiet preparation for the magnificent return of spring. By allowing these plants to keep their foliage, their stems, and their flower buds, you are providing them with the natural protection they need to survive the cold and thrive in the coming year. You are working in partnership with nature's elegant design. I encourage you to embrace this more relaxed approach to fall cleanup. Find the beauty in the untidiness. See the frosted seed heads not as a mess, but as a bird feeder. See the tangled foliage not as clutter, but as a blanket for a sleeping crown. This shift in perspective will deepen your connection to your garden and its inhabitants. It allows you to observe and appreciate the subtle beauty of the winter landscape, a beauty that is structural, textural, and full of the promise of life waiting just beneath the surface. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this has empowered you to put down your shears and enjoy the unique splendor of the autumn and winter garden. By making these informed choices, you are ensuring a garden that is not only healthier and more resilient, but also more vibrant and full of life next spring. Remember, a good gardener knows when to act, but a great gardener knows when to wait. Until next time, happy gardening.